Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen and people of the tube. I am ForceOfWill, and joining me via satellite is...
3 Degree Burr.
So, in this episode of The Verdict, we are reviewing a film called The Sacrament. And before we get started on the actual movie, I want to address the elephant in the room with this film. That is the Jonestown tragedy. The film is basically a carbon copy of what happened at Jonestown, but it tries to make itself look like Jonestown never happened, or it has no relation to Jonestown whatsoever. It actually states during the credits that this tale has nothing to do with anything in history, and I found it quite offensive, seeing as they drew so heavily on what happened.
Yeah, I find it myself to be highly disrespectful to those who were involved in Jonestown, and just ignoring the fact for a moment that Jonestown was an absolute tragedy where hundreds of people did lose their lives. It's not acknowledging your roots. If something gives you the creative spark to go ahead and make a film that gets all of this viewing, you have the decency to fucking acknowledge where you got that inspiration from.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that really gets me with that is the only thing I can think that happened that made them do it this way is they attempted to contact maybe a Jonestown survivor or somebody that was ex-Temple, and they said, look, we don't want it dramatising, we don't want it as a horror film, we find that disrespectful. So they had to try and distance themselves from it, while at the same time, you know, you've got the main character of Father directly fucking quoting Jones.
You know, if people who were involved in the real Jonestown tragedy in any way, shape or form were to turn around to you and say that they found it offensive that what actually happened was being used for entertainment purposes, then rather than completely ignore that that's what you are referencing, then you would try to pull away from the Jonestown itself. You wouldn't quote it directly and then just completely ignore it. You would maybe infer it, but it wouldn't be the fucking elephant in the room that it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you take this movie and you don't know anything about Jonestown, this film is fucking fantastic. It's so well acted, it's well written, the execution, no pun intended, is fucking flawless. The framing, everything. By the way, people, this is Gnarly. This is Nylathotep. This is one of my cats. He's just going to leave the stream now. Well, the video. Anyway, you know, if we take away from the whole Jonestown thing, it's a great film. But the fact that Jonestown happened, and I know quite a bit about Jonestown. I'm fascinated by old serial killers and just the fucked up shit that man does to each other. It really does interest me. And Jonestown was a fucking terrible, terrible thing. You know, 909 people died in 1978. And the one thing I will say about this film is it doesn't set it in 78, it sets it in modern day. So it tries to transplant the actual tragedy to present day and how it would be seen, how it would be discovered nowadays, and I give them credit for that at least.
Yeah, that was something that I really enjoyed, the timely approach to this tragedy. You know, all the rave back in the 60s and 70s was over the whole racism issues that were going on in society, and they kind of didn't completely ignore that, but pulled away from it to focus more on technology and social media and media outlets in general.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was something that me being a younger viewer could really connect with much more.
Yeah. I mean, moving on from the fact that, you know, personally, if they did it and there was no reason for them not to admit where it came from, that's a deal breaker for me. That makes this film a terrible view because of how fucking great it is. You know, I mean, it tarnishes the entire movie for me.
Yeah, it does make it quite a shame because, you know, you sit through this entire film, and I was actually expecting when it drew up at the end and said that 160 something people died in Eden Parish, I was expecting it to give the real number of people who died in Jonestown.
Yeah, I was.
But I felt like I'd just sat through this like hour and 20-minute long film being completely satisfied with what I'd just seen, and then had it ruined for me in the last 5 minutes. It made everything I'd just seen fucking offensive.
Yeah, it makes it classless.
Yeah, definitely.
That irritates me because it is such a good film. I mean, up until that ending and you know, the complete ignorance of where it came from, this was going to be Team Lioncourt's first 10 of 10 on the verdict. It really was, because it is that fucking good. And
you were the only person who actually sat down through the entire credit scene.
Yeah.
To see this disclaimer at the bottom, and you know, maybe I could have let it slide a little bit if they hadn't have mentioned Jonestown during the actual film, but had put a disclaimer at the end, including Jonestown. But
just something, not even a disclaimer, just something like, you know, respect to the memories of those lost at Jonestown.
Yeah.
And it didn't need to be obvious. It could have been at the end of the credits where this fucking disclaimer was. And I know that disclaimer is at the end of all films, but not all films have this bit that says history. And that was the red flag for me. That's what really made me angry. Because this film is so fucking good.
It's like they went from not mentioning anything at all to going, in case you didn't notice, we're not crediting where we got this from.
Yeah, I mean, we'll start talking about the actual movie and the opening. The setup for this film is a YouTube channel called Vice, and I love Vice. They report on the stories that the mainstream media tends to avoid, and I'm a big fan of them, and they use that as a launching pad for the whole found footage thing. Now, I will say, I'm going to list the found footage films that I think are fucking really good. Because found footage is oversaturated at the moment. Everybody's doing it, but not everybody is doing it very well. And there are certain films that are landmark moments in the kind of found footage genre. Am I right?
Yeah.
So we'll go with the original that launched it, the Blair Witch Project. Now, I know, looking back on it now, it's cheesy. There's lots of fucking wandering about in the woods for you know, 3/4 of the thing, and next to fuck all happens. But it was revolutionary the way it was shot and directed and acted, because a lot of those reactions were real. They didn't know what was going to happen to them in the woods. They were told, here's some camping equipment, here's your basic story, go into the woods, we're going to fuck with you. That was it. You know, every morning each one of them would get a note with like 3 things that had to happen during the day, which is why Mike, out of nowhere, kicks the fucking map into the river, because it was just them fucking with them. Yeah?
I'm learning something new today.
You know, you've got to give Blair Witch credit. You know, I know looking back on it, there are glaring problems with it, and in some ways it is quite a boring film, but it was pioneering. It was the one that made the rest. Grave Encounters, both of them.
That I'm going to admit to the internet right now gave me nightmares for about 3 days.
Yeah,
that film was amazing.
Yeah, Grave Encounters.
Again, it's another cheesy little horror film set up with a paranormal crew in a mental asylum. How many times has that gimmick been approached?
Yeah.
But there was something about the way that film was shot that really stuck inside my head.
I loved the way that the film went completely, like, all my favourite films And it's an Eli Roth thing in particular, and we'll get to that because Eli Roth is one of the producers on The Sacrament, and you can tell which bits he sort of had some influence on, and especially like my favourite kind of horror films are very slow to start with, and then at about the halfway point, they go completely fucking batshit insane. Grave Encounters is a perfect example of it. I know it has like some ridiculous effects, but it's so good. And then the second one, where they try to convince you that the asylum itself has is sentient and wants to be like in the world and wants people to know about it. It goes fucking mental, and it's great. It's great fun. It's brilliant the way that it's shot. 10 of 10. It's great.
On the subject of things in horror films such as Grave Encounters, like the silly effects and things in Blair Witch, like cheesy little moments, I don't think that you can really get a 10 out of 10 horror film without having those elements of humour in it as well.
Yeah. I mean, this film I wouldn't class... The Sacrament I would not class as a horror film. It is a morbid drama.
Yeah.
It's not a horror film, and there is no humour in it, and I couldn't make jokes about this if I tried. It's a very disturbing film. I mean, ridiculous films, Human Centipede, I can watch that shit. It's brutal, but it's funny because it's so outlandishly brutal. Whereas The Sacrament is realistically brutal and terrifyingly so in certain scenes. Certain scenes literally made me feel sick in my stomach.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to say was, I know we're trying really hard to pull this film away from Jonestown, but it is very difficult considering how it's practically fucking identical. But knowing what I know about Jonestown and knowing that they can't really show this kind of brutality in such graphic detail on real documentaries made this the most graphic depiction of what happened. Knowing what I know made me feel sick.
Yeah, it replaced... It sort of gave you that insight into what could possibly have happened, and that makes your brain go, yeah, that's probably what happened.
Yeah.
It was probably as graphic as this. And, you know, hats off to them. They did not hold back on the death scene, but we are jumping far ahead there. One of the other found footage films that I wanted to mention, because there is a connection from that film to this, is the wonderful anthology horror series known as VHS. VHS 1 and 2, and I think there's a third one. I'm not sure. But
yes, there is. I've seen it.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm going to get on that. The guy that directed this film, Ti West, he also worked with Eli Roth previously on both a segment from VHS and Cabin Fever 2. So he's got a history with Eli, and on Eli Roth, he is the man that made me interested in the ins and outs of how movies are made, how shots are done, how the psychology of a horror movie. You know, little things like leaving extra carbon on the film so it darkens everything without actually taking any of the light away. Fantastic. But yeah, you can see there are certain points in this film where you look at it and you go, that was Eli Roth.
Yeah, definitely. On the subject of films, and specifically found footage films that connect to this film, Apocalyptic is definitely one that I wanted to mention outright, because that's another found footage film that focuses on religious communes and things going horribly wrong, and a few unintentional coincidences. Obviously coincidences are unintentional, but a few unintentional similarities is the word that I was looking for.
Yeah.
Between these two films really made me happy, because Apocalyptic is another found footage film that approaches the same subject in a much less disrespectful way. I'm a really big fan of.
Yeah, it was a bloody good film. That I'm just rolling a cigarette. The final film in the found footage genre that I would like to mention is a little movie called Afflicted.
Yeah.
Afflicted. The storyline is two friends, one of whom is dying of a terminal illness, take a trip around the world, and they're sort of recording everything that happens and everything that they do. And one of them gets bitten by something. It's a non-traditional look at this particular creature. I'm not going to give too much away. All I'm going to say is my favourite scene from this film is the infected man sits in front of a camera very much like I'm doing right now. He puts a shotgun into his mouth, blows the back of his head off. His head flops down for about 30 seconds, and then out of nowhere, jump scare galore, he suddenly rears back up and it heals. That's how fucking extreme this film gets. There's some really awesome parkour stuff because he's got the camera mounted on his chest. There's some really, really great stuff there. So I recommend that. But we are here to talk about the Sacrament.
Yeah.
So,
jumping straight into when we were talking about the run up to it, when they actually get to driving up that 2-kilometre road through the jungle to get to this parish.
just before that, sorry.
Yeah.
The fact that they're contacted by Caroline, one of the victims of the actual Jonestown massacre was called Carolyn. I'm going to be pointing out most of the similarities as we go along, and also talking about how fucking amazing this film really is, if you take away from the fact that it's just ripping off an actual tragedy. I don't know whether awesome film is really the term, but yeah, the fact that they get letters and they go on this random plane ride, and then they go on this random helicopter ride, and the helicopter pilot tells them, you're going to be here at 10 o'clock tomorrow, or I'm going to leave without you. Here by 10, or I'm going to leave you. As they get off the helicopter, the brother of the person, there's three reporters, two with cameras and one's the brother of the person. I would remember the names, but I can't.
It's Caroline.
I remember Caroline, but I don't remember any of the guys' names, which is a bit...
Right, I thought you meant you couldn't remember who he was a brother to.
No.
So you pointed that out.
There's-
I can't remember any of their names either, which shows how much of shit reviewers we are.
Yeah,
But,
pretty much.
Oh well.
But they're greeted by two guys with machine guns, and they're told that one guy, the brother of Caroline, is authorized to be there, and they're not. And Caroline has to talk father into it, I think.
Wasn't his name Patrick, the brother?
Yeah, I think Patrick's the brother. Anyway, so Patrick's allowed to be there. They're not. It's a 2-kilometre road from this bit of field where this helicopter lands to what they call Eden Parish. And when they actually get through the gates, and the gates are being locked, the guys are still there with machine guns. They're having to film on the quiet so that they can get authorization. And the compound that they live on in this film is an almost 100% replica of Jonestown. It's set out in a very, very similar manner, with the pavilion in the centre and the medical centre with the creche on the side. It's disturbing how much it looks like Jonestown.
Yeah. Before we get too ahead of the bit that I was talking about just then, small tiny thing, but as they're driving up this 2-kilometre road and the camera pans to the right hand side, and you notice that tacked to 3 different trees are 3 different signs that read out "This is it."
Yeah.
As you're going up, and that added an amazing creep factor to it.
Yeah, it was. You instantly get the feeling that something's not quite right.
Especially when when things are that happy clappy that you've got signs throughout the jungle saying "This is it." You know that you're dealing with some people who aren't quite of sound state of mind.
Well, this is it. It's the way the film sets it up is like the first sort of half an hour. I think it starts to lose its shit at like the 39th minute. but for the first sort of half an hour, it's very, very slow. The way it builds tension, I think, is fucking amazing, because you've got all these creepy little elements like the mute kid and the mother calling. When they asked to speak to the mother, when they asked to interview her, she turns around and says, "quote We're not supposed to speak to outsiders," and that's the first time you get a really in your face something's fucking wrong here.
Well, actually, I think the first red flag is he wants all of their passports before they enter.
Yeah, again, that is something that Jim Jones did.
Yeah, what unsettled me about what the mother said to him and not being able to speak to outsiders is that she very specifically points out that she's not allowed to speak to outsiders, but she's not allowed to speak to outsiders about the parish.
Again, which harks back to Jim Jones's group, which was the People's Temple originally, and how anyone that spoke out against it was, it was one of those things you don't speak negatively about it, and the fact that Jim Jones himself managed to convince people that he was a god, it's the similarities. It is like watching a violent dramatization of what happened.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't make reference to the instance in where Jim Jones actually had somebody pretend to be blind and crippled so that he could pass himself off as a healer.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised that they didn't reference that, especially since the guy in the interview, which we will get to, was bombarding him with such questions that were shedding a negative light on him. I think that would have been a good point of the film to bring that reference in.
Yeah.
If they're going to try and make a carbon copy of Jonestown.
Yeah. They meet the sister, and the sister, Carolyn, is a little bit batty. There's something very rabid and hyper about her.
She's very, very in your face and overly friendly. She is almost desperate to get you into there.
Yeah.
And get you to have a positive opinion about it straight away.
Yeah. The fact that she takes Patrick off straight away, basically isolates the other two. The other two go wandering around. They speak to a few people. We find out later that those are the people that Father, which, by the way, is something that Jones's followers called him, they were planted people by Father. They were people that were deliberately put there to speak nicely about the parish. They end up landing an interview with Father, and it's a rather bizarre interview because it's in front of everybody there on stage, which is like a psychological trick on Father's part to take the power away from the guy interviewing him. Zai!
About the interview, one of the things that I really liked, besides the other psychological tricks that we'll come to point out that were used in this scene, is that every time Father opens his mouth to say something, he's followed by cheers of agreement from the crowd. The moment he turns around and says, "You are a guest, so therefore this parish is as much yours as it is ours," he gets a disapproving ooh sound from the crowd.
See, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I love how as soon as he mentions about sharing the parish in any kind of way with these outsiders, the tone of the crowd completely changes.
Yeah.
It's like I could almost feel the atmosphere in that room drop when he said it, and he quickly moved on.
As I said before, the film begins to lose its shit. It gets real fucking scary at the 39th minute when, without prior knowledge of anything to do with the character interviewing him, the Father character turns to him and he says, "Do you love your wife? Do you love your unborn son?" And it immediately catches him off guard and he freezes in front of everybody, and Father uses that to assert his power in front of everybody. And then they have this big celebration And one of the things that I noticed straight away, which isn't referenced until like much later in the film, is the fact that Patrick is being danced on, like in a sexual manner by these two random girls, and he's he's having a laugh and he's getting into it, and then he vanishes off again, and then we get the Eli Roth moment.
Yeah.
We get
I love how it's just as the guy who couldn't settle in starts to feel comfortable with his surroundings, he feels like that for about 5 seconds before shit hits the fan.
Yeah, there's the bang on the door and the note. Please help her. Oh, no, it's not a bang on the door. They're out in the field.
And it's just as he says, I'm starting to dig this. Turns round, creepy and mute kid.
Yeah. Oh, just as a thing, in any horror movie, if you've got a creepy mute kid, a kid that cannot speak, that shit is instant creepy. If it's done well, and in this film it is done extremely well. We get this note that says, "Please help us," and again, it's very Jonestown. That is exactly what happened at Jonestown. The reporters that went to investigate, along with the congressman that was murdered over there, received a note saying, "Please help us." They then go around a corner, and there's like 9-10 people with the girl and her mum.
Yeah.
And the mother is...
they're kind of at a distance. They're not particularly stood within personal space distance.
No, but they are like sort of... they are hiding.
Kind of guarding her in a way, seeing that she's going to interact with these people, they want to keep an eye on her.
Yeah.
Not for her safety, but...
No, you're getting ahead there. You're getting ahead when the little girl runs off and they follow the little girl, and there's the group of people that want to leave.
Yeah, I know where you're up to now. They're going through the washing lines.
Yeah. They go and find this group of people, and there's like 9 or 10 of them, and the mother of the mute kid turns the mute kid around, and there's huge red bruises and welts on the back of her neck, and that's why it's revealed that, father or whoever he's having doing it is beating this kid and is a brutal dictator, which is exactly what happened during the Jonestown incident. So
I think it's kind of inferred in this film, though, that a lot of the beatings and abuse went on mostly behind closed doors to keep those who brainwashed. Whereas in Jonestown, a lot of the abuse he inflicted upon people was very public.
Yeah. He'd
make them come up onto stage so that he could beat them and sexually exploit them.
Yeah.
And it was kept much more behind the scenes.
Yeah, that element of the Jonestown incident is not brought into this film. And again, talking through it with you now, I'll give him credit for not bringing that in. To be honest,
yeah,
it's much creepier not knowing how many of these beatings has happened and the fact that it's a hush hush thing.
Sorry to cut you off again. With how disrespectful it is in the first place, and I'm getting slightly ahead of where we're up to here, that they didn't mention it. I like the fact that they also didn't bring up in this that a lot of the sexual activities that were going on behind the scenes in real life weren't consensual, but in the film were thoroughly consensual.
Yeah, they keep away from that side of Jones. I mean, it's more... This film focuses less on the Jones part of Jonestown and more heavily on the actual incident.
Yeah, the bare bones of what happened.
At the 49th minute, we find Caroline, and we're asking her where Patrick is, and she's like, "Oh no, he's off with these two girls." And the quote is, "We all must sin sometimes, as long as Father agrees." And I was like, oh my fucking god.
And the way that she infers that these two girls coming on to Patrick, taking him away for a bit of fun, was all premeditated before he got there. It's, I miss my brother. I think he'd like it here, so we're going to give him a bit of a nudge to stay. Yeah,
it's all incentive to stay, and it actually comes out later that the reason she's invited him over is because Father wants the money that he can get at.
Yeah.
And that's what that's all about. But there's a whole bit just after that where one of the camera guys turns to the other and goes, Is she high? Zydrates.
Yeah. Is his sister high? Because I'm pretty sure she's not supposed to be.
Yeah, it was a very, very dryly delivered line, and it was just dry enough that it was appropriate for the film.
Yeah, should point out, because I don't think we really mentioned this when we were talking about the setup of the film, but it's actually explicitly stated that the reason why she went to join this commune in the first place was to get clean of a drug addiction.
Yeah, it said earlier on in the movie.
Yeah, she's there off her tits.
At 52 minutes, it goes all out. Eli Roth, batshit insane, Jonestown massacre. You get everyone gathered in the pavilion, and they're giving out. They're making the Kool-Aid. Is exactly what happened at Jonestown. There's big vats of juice with cyanide, and everyone's drinking it. And the father character is using like Bible quotes and direct fucking quotes. I'm not even joking. If you put them side by side, and if I was any good at editing, I'd do it in this video, but I'm not. If you put those two bits side by side, now I've heard the entirety of what happened at Jonestown. I've heard the recording of the actual massacre happening, and some of the lines that come out of Father are literally direct quotes from what Jones said on the day.
Yeah, to name but a few. Don't be afraid, it's just stepping to the other side. They will come with guns and bombs and wipe us out.
Yeah, when it's all kicking off, one of the cameramen is assaulted, and Father, I keep going to call him Jones. Legitimately, I keep going.
This film is actually Charles.
Is it Charles? Did you write it down? Nice one. But anyway, one of the cameras gets handed off, and the editing between these two cameras is fucking fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to point out was this specific shot where Caroline goes to pick up the camera that's been dropped on the floor, and it's panning across the floor as she picks it up, and just as it reaches the end of her dress, it transitions almost perfectly into another one of the cameramen running around the woods with his camera, almost as if it was the same shot.
Yeah.
Until he turns the camera around and you see that it's not Caroline holding the camera, it's the other guy.
While all this shit is going on at the pavilion, the other cameraman has done a runner to go to the helicopter to try and get the helicopter pilot to stay and take more people out, because it's all kicking off. People want to leave. Fucking Father's losing control, and the Kool-Aid's coming out, motherfucker. The henchmen chasing the camera guy, they shoot the helicopter pilot in the leg and in the arm, and somehow this motherfucker survives to the end.
Yeah, he survives like 25 minutes with a big bullet hole right through his shoulder, and I'm pretty sure there's arteries there. And, you know, you've got pools of, like, over-the-top bright red blood. That blood did not need to be that bright red. Yeah. Thank you, Eli Roth.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely an Eli Roth thing.
Yeah, but somehow he manages to survive 25 minutes whilst he's bleeding out and still manage to not be drowsy enough to fly a helicopter.
Yeah, and still be fucking conscious. That was the thing that I thought was just totally unrealistic. Just for everyone watching, if I seem a little bit distracted, it is because I have got my wonderful, wonderful kitten with me, and I'm going to lift him up and introduce him to you all. This is Sevatar. Look at how cute this kitten is.
Oh, he's my baby. Isn't he starting to look like Jinx now, though? But proportionate.
He's gorgeous, and he's my baby boy, and he's very patient, and now he's going to go and sit with his brothers.
Oh, I don't like favoritism, but he is my favorite cat of yours.
He's lovely. Anyway, we get back to the henchman, the transition shot that you're talking about. The cameraman survives the gunshots. He doesn't actually get hit, and he runs off into the woods. And that bit is very Blair Witch. You've got to admit it.
Yeah. I think that thought actually crossed my mind. I was like, if this was dark right now, and there was a supernatural element to this, much like there was an apocalyptic, then this would be fucking Blair Witch all over.
Yeah. And now we get to the my first issue with the with the movie. You have the camera, so the cameraman dives behind this pair of logs, and the camera's sort of positioned so you can see through the gap. And the henchmen come, they find the camera, he's not there, but they don't break the fucking camera. Why not break the camera, or why not take it with you?
Yeah, especially if the biggest fear and the entire reason behind what's happening is father doesn't want this out. But I think it kind of connects with towards the end of the film, when there is literally only 4 people left alive. You've got 2 reporters and 2 guards, and then one of them turns around and shoots the other guard.
Yeah.
This we know that this twist is done just so that we can carry on to the end of the film.
Yeah,
they could have at least been creative enough to explain it away, but that is a possible connection that's only just dawned on me.
Right. It's that there's a couple of contrivances in it so that the story can carry on, like the whole them leaving the camera and then the fucking guy comes back for his camera, right? That was where I kind of lost my shit. The fuck is that?
So, I'm sorry about that. Somebody's just come in, probably pissed at 1:25 in the morning.
Right, okay.
Shut his mouth off outside.
Right, okay. Anyway, so yeah, we get the guy comes back for the camera, and it's only so the story can carry on from that point of view. And then we get. There's a couple more quotes from Father Jones. The air raid siren. Jesus fucking Christ. Every time I hear an air raid siren, it scares the shit out of me. One of the buildings behind where I live has that as the sort of lunch alarm, and it fucking terrifies me. It's reminiscent of, like, Silent Hill when you hear that. And then the fucking shadow world comes down. It's fucking... It just... in the pit of your stomach, you go... Fuck me, something's wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Speaking of the speakers, the tannoy that they actually played that noise over, one thing that I think would have really added to the psychological effect it was having on the reporters whilst they were there, is that they should have included the fact that in Jonestown that tannoy played 24 hours a day. You had to sleep through it, you had to wake up to it, and I think that would have really added to the psychological trauma effect they were trying to create with the reporters.
There's a bit where when the 2 henchmen find the camera that the guy eventually goes fucking back for, you overhear them say, "This is the end Father talked about. No one can leave here alive," and that's when we know that's it. It's going off, and then you have the air raid siren. You've got the Kool-Aid, everybody drinking the Kool-Aid, and he's like I said before, it's direct fucking quotes. You know, it's not dying, it's just going to sleep. We're all going to be in heaven together. It's just stepping over. It's exactly what Jones said. And he turns to him and he says, "Some of the children have already been given the potion," and I'm almost 100% certain that's exactly what Jones called it.
Yeah, and the first time somebody questioned him calling it the potion, he quickly reverted to, "It's just medicine."
Yeah, it's just medicine.
It's just medicine that's going to send you to sleep.
There's a black lad, I think he's called Andre. It's Andre, his name is. I remember random characters, I can't remember the fucking main characters though. Andre stands up and he's like, "Why? This doesn't make sense. Why do we want to die?" And fucking Father Jones turns to him and he says, "Keep your dignity, son. You know, you choose how you die."
He is a very subtle representation of Christine, the first woman who actually stood up to oppose Jim Jones when he suggested that they all kill himself.
Yeah.
Very, very subtle in the way that Christine was shot on the spot for standing up and opening her mouth, and that was kind of nice, despite the whole film being as disrespectful as it was. That was a kind of nice representation.
You've got everybody slowly dying and people running away and people being shot with AK-47s. It's completely terrifying and completely insane, and it is so realistic. Like, legitimately, it is harrowing watching this film. And now, after he's sort of walking around and everybody's starting to die and everybody's crying, and there's one particularly nasty scene where somebody's being held down and you can see him going like this, and they're actually having the poison drink poured over their face so it goes into their mouth to kill them. But we get to what I feel is the second most awful, as in terrifyingly realistic scene, and it's between Patrick, who is tied to a chair and gagged in an office, and his sister. And she comes in and she's very
soothing.
Well, no, I was going to say she's very agitated. She knows it has to get done now. You know what I mean? And she she sits on his legs and forces him to drink the poison drink. And
she tries to force him. He knocks it over and she injects him.
Does she inject him?
Yeah.
Right, okay. And you can hear him asking, what did you give me? What's going to happen? Am I going to die? And he's crying and he's sobbing, and then he starts to convulse, and then he starts to froth at the mouth.
She holds him the whole time.
Yeah, and this scene's about, I don't know, I think it's about 3 to 4 minutes long, and I had to look away during this scene because it is very, very realistic. It made me feel so uncomfortable, and it's like 3 Degrees said earlier, it's like a more graphic depiction and probably far closer to the truth of what actually happened at Jonestown, and that really scared me. I mean, I love my horror films. This wasn't a horror film. This thing genuinely scared me. I don't get scared at horror films because horror films are ridiculous. This was real human terror.
Yeah, I think it really adds to it when the closer he gets to actually dropping dead, the more the realization starts to dawn on her about what she's actually doing and what she's actually losing.
Yeah, there's the moment after he's actually stopped convulsing and he's dead, and his sister sort of steps away with her hand over her mouth, and you can hear gunshots in the distance. And then that's when it cuts back to guy coming back for his fucking camera.
Fucking ridiculous. The only explanation that I can offer for that, and keep in my head to kind of let it slide, is that because he didn't know where he was going, he went in one big circle and accidentally ended up back where he started. And
he just thought, fuck it, I left it before, but I'll pick it up now. We get to what I think could have been the most devastating scene in this film, and it's where the doctor that we met earlier, I know we didn't really mention it, but there's a doctor on site, and she's sort of walking around and she's comprehending what she's been a part of, and you can see the dawning realization on her. And Father's walking around and he's got his hands out like this, and he's walking around and he's surveying his kingdom of fucking corpses. And personally, that scene to me has far too much background music. It should have just been completely silent and you could just hear what was there rather than a background music. That would have been far more effective.
I think it would have been much more effective if you'd had his slow footsteps and the birds tweeting in the background.
Yeah, basically, you could, what I'm saying is you could hear him walking around. You could hear, the final gasps of people there, because you could still hear that, under the music. You'd be able to hear the gunshots in the distance, and just no music. That scene did not need a backing track. That scene was fucking amazing and would have been perfect without that fucking music. I mean, I know we keep saying it's disrespectful, and it is disrespectful, but I'm trying to take the film on its own merits, and as a standalone movie, fuck me, it's amazing. It really is. It really is a great film. We then get we're with the guy that's got his camera and he's on his own, and he's running about, and he runs into the house, and he finds the mother and the mute daughter, and the mother is sort of laid, sort of sat with her daughter in her lap, and she's got a big fucking kitchen knife, really big knife, and he glances out of the back, and he sees the henchmen, is what I'd say they are. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, definitely, especially with the stance that they take throughout the entire film.
Yeah, they're the border security of of Eden Parish. That's it. I keep forgetting it. But yeah, we get to a scene where the guy he gets under one of the beds and he turns the camera slightly, and the mother is crying and she's like, "I'm not going to let them kill my daughter." And in true Eli Roth style, slow cut across the daughter's throat, and again, I had to look away. Genuinely had to look away. It was a horrible scene. And then you have the guards come in, and you hear 2 gunshots, which are very, very loud, very, very realistic. You hear the fucking shells hit the floor, and they leave. Camera guy comes out, and I didn't think they were going to do this. I thought they were going to leave it up to our imagination, and to me, this shot is a little bit of an unnecessary shot. Leave him alone.
Well, that's what Eli Roth's all about, unnecessary gore that just didn't need to be there.
The camera pans back round, and actually I'll mention something else Eli Roth based after this. The camera pans back round, and you can see the actual devastation of these 2 gunshots on these bodies, and it's horrific, and it lingers on it for about 6 seconds, and it's just too long, and that's a very deliberate thing on his part. But
just too much blood as well.
Yeah.
Too fucking much.
What it reminds me of is in another of Eli Roth's films, Hostel. It's actually my favourite moment in any modern horror film, and it's the guy tied to the chair with the surgeon, and he's crying and striking to be let go, and the surgeon walks behind him and cuts his Achilles tendons, and then he unties his wrist and he goes, "There you go, here's the door, walk out." And the reason I'm referencing this scene reminds me of the bit I'm about to talk about. The camera pans down and you can see the back of the lad's ankles, and as he stands up you see it separate, and he just flops, and it's so unnecessarily fucking and that's perfect Eli Roth.
Cringe.
Say again?
That scene, the first time I saw it, it really made me cringe. I know the other guys can't see me, but I know he can see me, and it made me do this face.
Yeah, definitely. I saw it in the cinema, and everyone. This shows my sense of humour and my personality. I saw it in the cinema, and everyone in the cinema went, "Oh," and I went, "Yeah." And every fucker in the cinema heard me, and it was really embarrassing. But anyway, back to Sacrament. After this scene, we eventually get to the main building. No, we go back to the building where Patrick is.
Yeah.
This is... I feel this is... Because Ty West was involved with like VHS and the ABCs of murder and things like that, they're very short, snappy, very graphic, horror-based stuff. And by this point, Caroline has gone completely fucking batshit insane, and her brother's dead, and she's ranting on about how you should never have come here. You've taken everything from me, and all the while she's dousing the room and herself in petrol.
Very hurried, very rushed. Like, I have to do this now.
Yeah.
I can't stand here for another 5 seconds.
Yeah, at this point, it kind of deviates from the sort of Jonestownness and goes just a little bit, fucking crazy. And she looks him dead in the camera, straight at the camera, and she goes, "You should never have come here." Lights the lighter and
lighter as well.
Yeah, like a kitchen lighter, and the whole fucking place goes up, and she's screaming and spinning, And the camera guy just fucking runs. Eventually, he gets to Father's house, which is like an office. And he comes in, and his mate, who is the guy that interviewed Father near the beginning, is handcuffed to a chair. He's been beaten, he's bloody, and Father is just sat, lounging, chilling the fuck out. And he there's a few things that he says. No, that's raw notes. That's still raw notes.
Raw is wrong.
Raw is wrong notes. There will be another Raw is wrong very soon. I'm still working on things.
What's Raw is wrong for nothing per month?
Yeah, exactly. For absolutely fucking free. You can give me $9.99 a month if you want. But
yeah, I'll take your $9.99.
Yeah, fucking too right. Oh, WWE for life. But anyway, that's not really relevant to this situation.
Because we didn't just pull WWE and shove a little bit of shameless self-promotion into one of our unrelated videos.
Yeah, I do apologise to anyone who finds that offensive. Anyway, as we're sort of going through the place, we see the doctor's note of "Please forgive me." There's a little bit of character development there, and then we get to fucking Father's office. And Father saying, something along the lines, I gave them all I could, then I gave them a way out. And everything he's saying is so Jim Jones, it's unbelievable.
My second to last cig.
Oh, devastated.
I know.
Anyway, while he sat there going on about how the world is evil and how these media people have destroyed his Eden, his heaven on earth, so he had to give everybody real heaven.
Not only destroyed his parish, but destroyed his entire vision. I'm sure there is a line there where he's saying, we were supposed to change the world. This was only supposed to be the beginning, and now it's the end.
Yeah, and then he sat there snorting cocaine, which is something that we knew, we know Jim Jones was doing. And then he pulls out a gun, and the two guys think he's going to shoot them. No. In the exact same way that Jim Jones went out during the very, very awful People's Temple massacre. He shoots himself in the head, and one cameraman has to retrieve the keys from his pocket. They start making their escape. There is Deus Ex Machina, when one of the guards suddenly defects and shoots the guy that's hunting them. There's actually a really nasty scene there where they're hiding from this guy with an AK-47 before they're rescued, and one of the guy that was tied to the chair has pulled one of the bodies over him to use as cover, and the body is still frothing at the mouth, and the froth
see it dribble down his arm,
drools down his face, and I was watching that, I was like, oh, that's minging.
And the fact that he's just sat there because he's so panicked, still talking like he's not got that dribbling down his face and arm.
Yeah, he completely fucking ignores it. Like I say, Deus Ex Machina with the fucking defecting guard. He rescues them out of nowhere. Get out of here. They get to the helicopter, and the helicopter pilot is still fucking conscious. And this is where both me and 3 Degree call bullshit.
Yeah, this film has lost a mark in my eyes. It already lost a mark for not once outright saying it drew inspiration from Jonestown, and it lost another mark for the two utterly unrealistic bullshit moments. The first being where he picks up the camera, the second one being where this fucking helicopter driver fucking survives. No, he didn't. How does this guy have 7 times more blood in his veins than the average human being?
Yeah, because when he's originally shot, there is a lot of blood, and he's bleeding quite heavily, and somehow he survives 22 minutes, and is still clear and able to pilot the fucking helicopter. It ends with them getting out on the helicopter and them saying 167 people died at Eden Parish. I found that particularly disrespectful, because at that point you've got to say something like this was inspired by a real life tragedy, and you know, I don't know, condolences or you know, you know, best wishes. The best wishes isn't right, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, the way I totally expected that to end was with 909 people died in the Jonestown massacre. This is dedicated
to them,
to the lives that were lost.
This was this was a dramatic representation of the lives that were lost. Let them never be forgotten. Something respectful like that. On that note, I'm not a big Fast and Furious fan, but Fast and Furious at the end of the present one, they do the whole Paul Walker montage scene, and there's a moment where Vin Diesel and Paul Walker are in separate cars and they're racing up the road, and they have the car with Paul Walker drive off into the distance, and it's so respectful to the fact that the guy has sadly passed away and won't be there anymore, and it was so poignant, it was so well handled, and this film just completely dropped the ball at the end. It was like, yeah, we made this up, this has nothing to do with anything else in the world, I promise, completely original idea.
And it makes it much worse that, 167, was it?
Yeah.
Is but a fraction of the people who died at Jonestown. It doesn't even begin to shed light on how big this massacre really was.
Yeah.
And that in itself is disrespectful.
I mean, what I'm going to do at the end of this video is I'm going to drop a Jonestown documentary link in the description below, and yeah, you guys can, if you go and watch the film, I do recommend it as a movie. It's a fucking good film. Not really into scores, so I'm going to give it an Eli Roth out of 10.
I'd already scored it halfway through as filming, and I'd have to give it an 8 out of 10 because it lost its 2 marks in the way I put forward before.
Fair enough, but yeah, I give it an Eli Roth out of 10. I do suggest you go and see it, but what I also suggest is that you watch the documentary that I'm going to put in the description below. It's about an hour and a half long, and it talks about what actually happened and how extreme the obvious inspiration for this film actually was. Any thoughts in closing, 3 Degree?
Not on the spot, no. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to say in this video now, so close there.
Cool. Well, I will apologise if the quality isn't perfect. We've had to do some sodding about to get this to work. So we will be trying to improve it in future. We are at Team Lioncourt on the Twitter. We are twitch.tv/Team Lioncourt on Twitch. Obviously, we are Team Lioncourt here on YouTube. Drop us a like, drop us a subscribe. Feel free to say hi at any point. I have been ForceOfWill.
I have been 3 Degree Bear.
This has been this has been The Verdict. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.